Welcome to the Sage Solutions podcast, where we talk about all things personal growth, personal development, and becoming your best self. My name is David Sage, and I am a self-worth and confidence coach with Sage Coaching Solutions.
Welcome back to part 2 of our conversation on perspectives of reality. Last week, we talked about the different factors that shape our unconscious perspectives and an experience that we had in Italy that really brought this all to fruition. If you haven't had a chance to listen to part 1 of this conversation, make sure you pause here, go back and find part 1 and really give that a listen before diving into this week's episode.
But before we get into it, our goal with this podcast is to share free, helpful tools with you and anyone you know who's looking to improve their life. So take action, subscribe, and share this podcast with them. So last week we talked a lot about taking control of our conscious perspectives and how much agency that gives us. But we also talked about being mindful and showing yourself some grace. In fact, mindfulness and being present is a perspective. It's a whole way of seeing the world. Many of us get anxious when we think about the future, or sad or depressed when we think about the ways that we've messed things up in the past. But when we are in the present, we are there in the present moment, actually experiencing life, and much less in our heads about things, and a lot of times more objective. Self-compassion is also a piece of mindfulness. And it's important to understand that shame is a terrible long-term motivator. So being kind to yourself, being compassionate to yourself is going to be much more helpful in the long run. And even in the short run. So when you catch yourself in a perspective that you don't want to be taking, you have a choice. And we can take 2 different approaches. The first approach would be to beat ourselves up over it, which just makes things worse. Or the second is to give ourselves some kindness and compassion. Say, it's okay. I'm human. But now that I'm aware of it, let's do something about it. Is just much more practical and helpful and frankly pleasant. When you feel terrible about yourself, you're unlikely to have a very helpful perspective. Gratitude is another part of mindfulness, which can have a huge impact on your perspective. When you're feeling genuine gratitude, not thankfulness, not like somebody holds the door for you and you're, oh, thank you. I mean like real gratitude, when you're feeling grateful for things in your life, like really feeling it. It puts your whole mindset in a totally different perspective. And when you're thinking thoughts of gratitude, you're going to see the experiences that are unfolding in front of you very differently. I want to take you through an exercise that gives a clear example of how relative our experiences can actually be, and how things you would think should always make you feel a certain way don't have to make you feel that way. Because I'm going to use this story to illustrate how they wouldn't. So, Anna, I'm going to walk you through an experience, and I may ask you some questions throughout, but I just want your genuine reaction to these things, okay?
All right, sounds good.
You wake up in the morning, you have to go to work. Your day is going reasonably fine. You get your morning coffee, and as you step into your car, it spills all over, a little bit on you, part on the car. Now you don't have your coffee. It had cream in it. You're trying to figure out like, oh, man, am I going to be able to get this stain out? How do you feel?
Ooh, well, that one has happened to me. And when it did happen, I remember feeling rushed and frustrated and annoyed. I think those 3 things.
All reasonable reactions to that situation. Now, you don't have time to clean up the coffee. You've got to get to work. So you buckle your seatbelt, get going. You do like a quick little damp up with a napkin that's in the car, what you can do, but you're not trying to be late to work. So now you're headed to work and you come up to a stoplight and the car behind you rear ends you.
Oh.
You get out of the car, you've been in this accident, you kind of take stock of yourself, you're physically okay. You find out that they're physically okay. But your car is pretty warped. You are now considering whether your car has just been totaled.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel?
I can feel it in my body. My heart would be racing. I'd be like maybe even on the verge of tears. I'd be worried about the other person and checking in on if they're okay. Yeah, so many things racing through my mind.
Are you still worried about the coffee?
Probably not. That would be the least of my worries in that scenario.
So you call your insurance company and you're trying to figure out what's going on with that. You know you have good insurance, so you're confident that they're going to end up paying for it. So it's not like you won't have a car, but just the whole process is a hassle. You also realize that you need to call work and let them know that you're going to be substantially late. So you call work and they sound really awkward when they're hearing you saying that you're going to be late, and they regret to inform you that they were actually waiting to fire you because of a mistake that you made at work that is not something they can accept. Now, this is your dream job. You've been here for 20 years. This career, it's everything you wanted for your life. How do you feel now?
Oh, I just felt my heart sink. I can't imagine being so passionate about something and having it be completely gone in an instant like that, and having to completely start a new fresh page in my life and have no financial security. Ooh.
Are you still really worried about the logistics of your car being switched and getting a new one from the accident?
No, I would definitely be more focused on what am I going to do with my job and my life.
So as you're contemplating what the heck am I going to do, you try and call your significant other, and it goes straight to voicemail. You call several more times. It goes straight to voicemail. Then you get a call from a number that you don't recognize. It's an emergency room at a hospital not far away. You find out something terrible has happened, and your significant other has been rushed to the ER. You need to get there right away, and they're not sure if they're going to make it. How do you feel now?
I'm far too much of an empath to go through this exercise. I'm like,
okay, I'm sorry.
My heart is sinking. I'm like close to tears. I think while the other big issue of my job could be in the back of my mind, there's no way I'd be even thinking about it in that moment, because I think I would just be consumed by fear.
And that's a normal, healthy response in that situation. The reason I took you through this exercise is because it shows that most people would think that anyone that got into a car accident would have that consuming their mind. But as we just showed, that's not always how it works. Once you're 2 problems up the chain of bigger problems, you're not even thinking about the car at all, besides the fact that you have to figure out a different way to get to the hospital. This just goes to show that you don't always have to see something as always causing the same reaction. The way I used to think about things operated like this. If X happens, I will feel Y. If traffic happens, I will feel frustrated. But then I realized there were a bunch of situations where traffic happened and I didn't feel frustrated. I was listening to a great podcast or audiobook or music that I loved, or having a great conversation with somebody. And frankly, the traffic didn't bother me at all because I didn't have anywhere to be. That was when I realized, well, then traffic doesn't cause frustration automatically. Otherwise, I would always be frustrated when I was in traffic, which means I can choose not to be frustrated just because there's traffic. X does not always cause Y. Often, Y is pent-up feelings, and X is the perfect opportunity to let those feelings out. Another thing, physiologically, nervousness and excitement are identical. It's just about the perspective that you take towards them, which means when you're feeling nervous, you have the ability to shift that towards excitement. All it is anticipation. They're both anticipation responses, one positive, one negative. Whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. A quote by Henry Ford, founder of Ford Motors. What he really means is that if you take the perspective that you can't do it, you're basically setting yourself up to not be able to do it. Which brings us to the law of attraction. We touched on this in the action episode. If you're not taking action, you're not using the law of attraction. But the law of attraction is when you think about things and manifest them or bring them into your life through your actions and putting yourself in situations that bring things into your life that get you where you're going. If you believe you can, you are manifesting that you can. If you believe that you can't, you are manifesting that you can't. Whether we're talking about mindsets, philosophies, paradigms, worldviews, standpoints, outlooks, viewpoints, or mentalities, all of these are just different words for perspectives. When you let your ego flare and respond with ego, it hijacks your perspective and shifts everything in a way of trying to protect yourself and often hurt others to protect yourself. This is a very unhelpful perspective, and we'll get into that more in a later episode. It's rare to find somebody who wants to hear what they don't want to hear. A quote by Adam Grant in his book, Think Again. When you frame a disagreement as a debate and not an argument, that perspective creates a much more beneficial and productive conversation. If you go into it with the mindset of having an argument, it likely means that you're not that interested in hearing what the other person has to say. You're trying to get across your point of view, and the other person is doing the same. If you're interested in hearing some of the things you don't want to hear, and the other person does the same, you'll both actually learn something. That mindset is crucial to having a successful debate. So you're both supposed to be giving your perspectives as effectively as possible so that you can each learn from each other. The point isn't to be right. The biggest miscommunication about communication is that it took place in the first place. If both people are of the perspective that they understood the other when neither did, you can see how that would cause problems. External rejection is what actually happens when someone tells you no. Internal rejection is the meaning that you choose to attach to it. Saying, "I can't change who I am," is both a cop-out and false. In a study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology in 2020, the study showed that personality tests show people's personalities aren't permanent and naturally change over time, and if consciously adjusted, can change substantially over time. I want to talk about two of the most powerful ways that our brain shifts our perspectives. The first one is the placebo effect. One of the first documented cases of the placebo effect was during World War II, when Henry Beecher, a medic in charge of a military base, ran out of morphine and had a series of soldiers that were badly wounded and really needed it. He decided to tell the soldiers that he still had morphine. In an act of desperation, he injected each of them with saline solution. Miraculously, most of the soldiers actually reported significantly decreased pain, despite saline having no actual pain-reducing effect. the placebo effect is so strong that all of medicine is tested against it. Your brain has so much power even over your physical body that it can change medical effects like your blood pressure and many other things, that every single medical advancement has to be placebo controlled. Think about that. If it can do that for internal things in your body, think what it can do for your external life. The second one is what's often referred to as the frequency illusion. It's what happens when you use your reticular activating system, or RAS. It filters the world. Let me give you an example. You just buy a car. You've never had a Subaru before, but now that you just bought a Subaru Outback, you seem to see them everywhere. You almost never even noticed a Subaru Outback before you bought that car. But now that you bought one, they seem to be absolutely everywhere. What your reticular activating system does is it filters the world so that you don't just have an outrageous amount of information overload. It filters and scans for what it thinks you deem important. And when those things become on your frame of mind, it lets them in. And all of a sudden you notice all of these things that it's been filtering this whole time. You can put your reticular activating system, your RAS, to work for you and have it notice the things that you want to bring into your life, including things in a bad situation that you can be grateful for, or the positives in a situation. I'm not talking about toxic positivity. I'm just talking about reframing your mindset and having your brain help you do it.
Wow, there is so much content here. I'm going to have to go back and, well, luckily for me, I get to edit it and I'll get to hear it again. But if I wasn't the editor, I would have to go back and listen again because there's so much here that you could sit with and reflect on and apply. Awesome. Speaking of applying, I feel like you've given me a lot to think about, but I really need your help with figuring out how to put some of this into practice. Because I often find myself stuck in an unhelpful perspective. But when I'm in that space, how do I get myself out of it without invalidating the emotions that I'm experiencing?
I think we touched on this before, but let me kind of bring this all together. Find an anchor. For me, the anchor that brings me back into focus about my perspective is Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning. Picturing him there in that concentration camp might be an extreme example, but seeing him in that situation, feeling gratitude, really brings everything into perspective for me. It grounds me. And once you've found your anchor, you can use these few steps to shift your perspective. The first step is just finding awareness in your perspective. It's practicing, noticing when your perspective is unhelpful. Taking a deep breath, using that anchor, then acknowledging where you're at, bringing yourself to the present, giving yourself compassion, not beating yourself up, but understanding how you got to that perspective. Giving yourself a moment to feel any emotions you may need to feel, because suppressing your emotions is just going to make it worse. And then once you get yourself to that place, then you need to bring it back to taking your agency and saying, you know what? I have control, and I'm going to shift my perspective because I have agency here, and I'm going to take it. And then thinking about what would be helpful and doing it.
Yeah, that's really good. Like you said, the brain is like a muscle, and as we all know, it's a lot easier said than done, and it would definitely take practice to naturally recall those steps in those moments and be able to apply that. But thank you for giving me a checklist and a pathway that I can follow and start to practice so that I can get better at this in time.
Yeah, that's kind of like the optimal way to do it, but that doesn't mean that you have to hit every single one of those steps every time. I mean, I don't want people to get all hung up on Like, oh no, I missed step 4 and now the whole thing is ruined.
Yeah, that would be me.
Frankly speaking, whatever functionally works out of that, do it.
Okay, well, that helps me with getting out of it when I'm already stuck in that moment. But my follow-up question would be twofold. You already touched on how shame is involved in all of this a bit. But after the fact, when I'm out of a mood where my perspective is not very helpful, I often feel ashamed because I'm very aware of how my behavior due to that perspective impacted others around me. So, 2 things here. 1, how do you repair your impact after the fact? And 2, how do you proactively prevent yourself from repeating the same unhelpful behaviors in the future?
It's a good question. In fact, I feel like it's something I want to reflect more on. But here is how I'm going to answer it now. Adopting helpful general perspectives, such as gratitude, empathy, assuming positive intent in others, being present and in the moment, and frankly avoiding unhelpful ones, like a victim mindset, where nothing is ever my fault and the world is out to get me, is the fastest way to give up my agency and make myself feel hopeless. Utilizing or avoiding these different mindsets are all tools in your tool belt of perspectives that can help you avoid these problems in the first place. But once you've already been in that situation, we all do it. I definitely do it. Where I screw up an interaction, I didn't catch myself, and, I brought an unhelpful perspective to the table. And it caused that whole interaction to not go well. Going back and having genuine conversations with people where you had an interaction that did not go well because of your perspective can be hard. I mean, it's hard for me, but it's worth it to go back, apologize if you're the one that caused the problem in the first place, and help them understand that you were in the wrong mindset and that you're not telling them this as an excuse. You're just trying to get them to understand where you were coming from and that you are learning from this experience and realize that there was a more helpful way that you could have looked at it and that you are endeavoring to do that in the future. As long as it's coming from a genuine place and not just wanting people to forgive you so that it's easy, I think that is about as good as you can do.
Yeah, I totally agree. I often find that the most uncomfortable and hard conversations to have are the most worth having. And when you're approaching it from a place of genuine repair, I've never had somebody not be open to that conversation. But it sounds to me like all of this is just a practice. Practicing those mindsets to not get in it in the first place. Practicing what to do in the moment when you're already stuck in it to get out of it. And practicing getting uncomfortable to repair it when you make the mistake, which is inevitably going to happen. So thank you for all of this awesome advice. I know that I'm going to be able to put it into practice, and I hope that some of our listeners can do the same.
Thank you for listening to the Sage Solutions podcast. Your time is valuable, and I'm so glad you continue to choose to learn and grow here with me. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on more sage advice. One last thing. The legal language. This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. No coaching-client relationship is formed. It is not intended as a substitute for the personalized advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional.